Welcome to Activate Your Introvert, the weekly radio show to uncover and unlock the entrepreneurial skills in your business. In this week's show, Introvert Myth of the Week. Introverts don't go networking. Tip of the week, getting your team to interact when you send them to meetings on your behalf. And a discussion with James West. James is one of the co-founders of Only Networking, the business networking for people who like people. Just before speaking to James, a business owner recently asked me about getting a team member to visit an event. I've often heard things like, my team won't go networking, don't like it, or are no good at it. And when I've said, what, all of them? They've told me it's the quieter ones they struggle to send networking. So here's a couple of thoughts that might help you help your introverts go networking or go to an event on your behalf. Number one, what are your expectations of them? Do they have to stick to your script? How much can they be themselves? Number two, is it a sit down or a buffet dinner or a Zoom event? If you're inviting an introvert to an event, you might preempt the worries on this one. Buffets mean more flexibility. You can get food, sit, eat, disappear for a few minutes to recharge. A formal sit-down forces more social interaction, even if it's more structured. And, cross fingers, it won't be long till we're having that kind of event again soon. Do you want them to present in front of the group? Introverts can be good at presenting. They'll prepare and practice, but they will want notice to being put on the spot. How long does the event last? Introverts tend to want to know how long an event will last. They have limited amounts of people energy. Equally helpful is to say something like, the meeting finishes at 3, but people often start to leave around 2. Now the introvert knows they're not stuck to the bitter end. Introverts tend to prefer a formal structure and know what's expected rather than having to engage in spontaneous conversation. Who will be there? From the introvert perspective, this is all about social interactions. Is this mainly people they know or new people? The question will allow them to prepare. Does the introvert need to ensure they're fully charged with people energy before attending? When you're getting introverts to go to meetings for you, whether that's regional meetings, conferences, networking, work, social events, there's often going to be time chatting to other people. So giving them as much notice as you can will really help them. It's not only introverts that don't like open networking, although most introverts find it exhausting and often avoid it. By considering your team in advance, you can help them get more from the meetings for you. Do let me know what tip you'd like to help you activate the entrepreneurial skills in your business, or what introvert myth you'd like exposed. Drop me an email, give me a call, or add it as a comment to your review on the iTunes store. I'd love to hear from you. But now, it's time to talk to James. Welcome, James.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
Before we dive in and talk about networking and how well Only is done as a network, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And possibly more importantly, what does that mean to you?
I would naturally lean towards I'm an extrovert. Running a networking business, you'd expect that, wouldn't you? But I think what's interesting, there's certain characteristics where I think I'm resolutely an extrovert. I mean, if you'd look at one of the core indicators seems to be, I get my energy from people, I get my energy from being alone. It's certainly the former. I like being around people. I find people fascinating and energizing. So I think certainly that part, I'm an
Leads
extrovert.
you to extrovert. Thank you. What led you to that tagline? Was it just the love of people that you've...
Let's face it, networking has been around for a long time. Ben and I kind of invented the concept of bringing people together in a formal networking space. Myself and my wife, who we set Only up with, we both loved networking for different reasons. Kelly was very proficient at it. She got a lot of business as a travel business from networking. I kind of went more for the support and the camaraderie. I was working on my own. I was making money, but I wasn't particularly happy. Myself and Kelly met at networking and thought, this kind of needs updating. feels like there's a version of networking that's more in tune with the way we are. We really like people. And I think that strapline is born of the fact that our starting point was, let's remove all of the things that we believe get in the way of building relationships. What people don't necessarily want is lots of protocols, lots of rules, lots of hoops to jump through, because it gets in the way of, if you've always got an agenda in everything that you do, I don't think that's particularly conducive to building a good relationship. So our starting point for networking was more what we took out. Ours is more lead by example and just let relationships come to the fore. And then that strapline kind of naturally came from it. It wasn't actually invented by me, even though I was a journalist. I'd like to take credit. It was actually Sean Goldsmith, who's a franchise specialist, who's in Only. And he just said to me one day, you should just say you're on a network for people that like people.
You're one of the first groups to have gone all online, as I remember, because lots of others back at the time of COVID were almost doing it through gritted teeth and, well, we've got to carry on meeting, but we meet face to face really as soon as we can. You went the other way and you said, no, in future we're all online, apart from social stuff when we can.
Because there's a legacy there, John. I mean, Only stands for Online Networking Live Experiences. We always had this idea that we go face-to-face networking, it's really powerful, and then we treat online as this separate entity. And we always saw that, what if you could connect the two? What if you took that activity at face-to-face and then extended it through things like LinkedIn, actually had conversations on LinkedIn rather than just connecting for the sake of it? That was already built into this idea, can we combine online and in person anyway? It's in the name. We started doing online network. It was actually 18 months before the March 2020 lockdown.
Okay.
So we'd already done it. The problem we had, as much as we had people that loved what we did, and as much as we had kind of the technical knowledge, we couldn't convince people that it was worth it. They just would, even our most staunch fans, if you like, just didn't get it. That's not the way I want to network. So when we went into lockdown, whereas like you quite rightly say, a lot of the networking groups, it was very much a stopgap. Let's learn how to do it over Zoom. It will do for, what did we think back then? It's funny, isn't it? Probably a month.
A month or so, wouldn't it?
We'd already had our lumps and kind of ironed out the creases and realised what needed to change, what could be the same, how to use the technology such as breakout rooms. So
when you look at online networking versus face-to-face, what do you think is different in terms of networking skills?
Networking, if you don't like networking, if you're an introvert, it's probably because you're very aware of things like having to make small talk. It's probably because you're very aware of the loud people that dominate the room. You know, we had a lot of people in the early days, and again, this is stereotypical, but they are generally men in their 50s that hate online networking. And the reason why, and we actually had a few people kind of admit this, that I was used to walking into the room. I'm a big, loud, dominant character, and I love face-to-face because I can command the room. Online networking flattened that overnight.
Wow.
Can't do it. And I think that's been really profound, because we've actually had people leave that say, well, I don't get enough airtime. Literally word for word. That's what they've said. Because that was the way of that a lot of people did their networking.
In a sense, some of the extroverts used to get far more airtime than they would you, in inverted commas.
Because of the nature, the medium, and I think that doesn't work online. Let's face it, no one likes that person massively anyway, do they? You know, the really
very true
dominant character. I think what's happened now, and we're seeing already that networking's fragmenting. I think you'll get the people that are waiting to go back in person. They only want to do it that way. I don't think what they've quite recognized is that there are a lot of people that prefer online networking. They're incredulous to that fact because of their personality, because they're loud, they love being around people, they like the energy, they can commandeer a room. Whereas the slightly more thoughtful, considered people who like to step back, I've had conversations with people that would class themselves as introverts that say, I prefer online. I don't have to do the small talk. I'm prompted to speak. I can listen, observe. I can do my homework in the background. I don't get trapped in the corner by someone trying to sell at me. It's much more in your control, I think, online networking, isn't it?
So from the point of view of a networker, what do you think is now the primary skill to be successful?
I think communication is about being succinct. I think even more so than ever, you need a 1 or 2 line whether it be a strap line or a way to encapsulate what you do, because you've got so little time now online to get that point across. You don't get the opportunity to kind of have a chat while making the coffee. So I think you've got to work a bit harder on your initial messaging. You've got to put in the work to have one-to-ones, and not always what I think people think, oh, the only way I can build my network is to have one-to-ones. I think you can learn a lot by just listening and observe. Zoom, we've never had the facility. If you're a person who likes to observe human behavior, when have you ever been able to look simultaneously at 30 people's reaction?
Brilliant point.
You didn't.
I've often said that networking, in a sense, is about test marketing. I can throw out my 30 seconds, 1 minute piece. If I get a good reaction, I can use it again next week. But as you just said, it's even more powerful now because I can watch 30 people's reaction.
People have said, oh, online networking, you lose the emotion, you lose the ability to read people's reaction. And I suppose there are kind of subconscious, unconscious cues that we maybe get in person body. I think that is slightly wrong. I don't agree with that, actually, because I do think, again, if you're a lot, the people that say you can't pick anything up online and it's a very flat interaction are generally the people that, when they're talking, are all animated and trying to get your attention, and then they spend the rest of the meeting over here. They're clearly not paying attention. Everyone's laughing, and then there's that one person who's clearly doing their emails. Well, you'll say, well, that's my choice. That's one of the advantages of online. Don't expect me to be. I do notice that, by the way. I do notice that you want attention, but you're not prepared to give any.
Coming towards the end, James, can I just ask for a tip for somebody that's an introvert? How could they improve their network?
Get that proposition nailed down. Have one or two lines, because I think that makes you feel more comfortable. And then I think spend as much time paying attention to people online. So connect on LinkedIn, but have a conversation.
How about for an extrovert? So if I was one of those perhaps loud people that you talked about in the room, how can I be better online?
Listen, extroverts have a tendency to try and win by talking a lot. I think we have to listen. We've got to spot opportunities to help, because let's face it, we don't particularly want to help people that don't show any interest in us, do we? It is a give and take process. So I think an extrovert needs to get the proposition right, but calm down, listen, and realize that this is the rules have changed. You've got to do more work to build relationships. It can just be comment on people's posts, share and like their stuff. The one thing that everyone wants online without question is attention. So if you want attention, give others attention.
So James, we come to the end, I'm afraid. How can people get back in touch with you and find out more about Only?
Have a look at the Only website. Only is ONLE, so theonly.network. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, but do send me a message.
Thanks a lot for your time today, James. It's brilliant to talk.
You're very welcome. Thank you, John.
And now it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Those crazy stories that I hear and you hear that some people actually believe. The obvious myth that comes to mind after chatting to James is that introverts don't like networking. I think James nailed it as he made it clear that many introverts belong to his groups and they go networking, and many see big benefits in online networking. It's like many other semi-social situations. Don't assume that introverts and extroverts network in the same way or show off their results in the same ways. Introverts tend to do very well quietly focusing on and developing important relationships to them through one-to-one meetings. Introverts are much less likely to engage in loud willy-waving at networking meetings where they try to hog the limelight. The good thing for introverts is that as a networker, it's not about you. It's about helping your network. And that's something you can do quietly in the background. Thanks for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Please add your review to the iTunes store. It will mean a lot. Enjoy being introversial, and I'll catch up with you next week.